Hello, MacGyver here. This is my Bersa Thunder 22. I think it's called model BT 22. I picked this up at a local gun store, and I wanted a 22 caliber that felt in my hand like my 9mm for cheap practice. And I saw this one in the gun store. It looked like practically brand new. And so I picked it up at a good price. When I took this to the range to shoot it, I tried various inexpensive types of ammo, and I experienced a lot of malfunctions with it. A lot of failure to feed, failure to extract, failure to eject, stovepipe jams. I could hardly get through a magazine full of 5 rounds without a malfunction. So needless to say, I was very disappointed, and I decided to do something about it. Did some reading, and I saw that everybody's recommending using high velocity or hyper velocity ammunition. Everybody was saying that the CCI mini mags seemed to work well in the gun. However, I didn't want to have to spend a lot of money on ammunition. The whole purpose of me buying a gun was to run cheap stuff through it for cheap practice. So I did some modifications, and I finally got it running fairly reliably. That's what I want to do in this video. I want to go over what modifications I made, and hopefully it'll help someone else. Before I talk about the modifications I made to my gun, this gun was bought used, and I assume that there was no warranty with this gun. So I had no fear to make any changes to the gun because I didn't have a warranty to worry about. If you have a new Bersa and you're experiencing problems with malfunctions and such, I would highly recommend that you talk to Bersa and possibly send the gun back to Bersa for changes and fixes. This video is just showing what modifications I made to my gun, and I'm not recommending you make any modifications to your gun, but that decision is up to you. First thing I read was that the magazine was the cause of a lot of problems with this gun. So I wasn't sure, but the magazines felt pretty rough when I would depress the 2 buttons like this. So I decided to clean the magazines and take it apart and smooth it up. Taking it apart is very easy. What you do is this little tab in the bottom of the magazine here, you push it in, slide the plastic part over, hold your finger over it because the spring will go flying all over the room, almost like that. And you have the spring, the little spring seat, and now you have the magazine apart and you can work on it. Basically what I did is, this felt a little bit gritty when I first got the magazine, the slide. So I took 1200 grit emery paper, wet with a little bit of oil, and I ran it up and down in these grooves here where the buttons slide, and just smoothed them out a little bit. Basically that was it. Then I cleaned it with solvent, get all the grit out of it, and basically sprayed it with silicone spray. That's all I did to the magazines. Didn't change the feed lips or anything like that. So to put it back together, you stick the spring in there. Let's see if we can put this together without it going flying. Shove the spring in there. Okay, now that we've addressed the magazine issue, I'm going to take the gun apart and show you what I've done to the internals of the gun to smooth it up. First we remove the magazine, we depress this lever here, pull the slide all the way back, lift it up, forward, and off the gun. Now you'll notice that the spring, which rides on the barrel, can go on in two different directions. It's supposed to go on the gun with the tight end of the spring toward the breech of the gun. They also say that the gun functions better with the end of the spring in a 12 o'clock position. I don't know that that makes any difference whatsoever. First thing I did, is to look at where the slide rides. And these surfaces right here and here, up here, and on this side, they were all polished with 1200 grit emery paper soaked with oil. And the idea is you're just removing the machining marks. You're not changing the dimensions of the slide at all. So we polished on the frame where the slide rides. Now the slide itself, this rides on here. As you can see, the wear marks here, they were polished also with 1200 grit paper. Then on a buffing wheel, I buffed in here. I don't know what you call this thing, but it's got some wear marks on it, so I shined it up. And also this decocker here, we buffed that with red rouge on the buffing wheel. And then we cleaned everything very well. Now, if you look at the operation of the gun, I'll put it together without the recoil spring. When a slide comes back, the slide cocks the hammer here, like that. Now the hammer, it's this part of the hammer right here that is pushed back by the slide as the gun recoils. So this area of the hammer here, what I did was polish that on the buffing wheel without disassembling the gun. Just with red rouge on the buffing wheel, polish that, and now it's very smooth here. I thought about changing this radius here, increasing the radius a little bit so that the slide ramps the hammer back a little bit easier. But I did not have a spare hammer, and I didn't want to mess around with it without having a spare part in case I messed it up. Plus it requires a lot more disassembly of the gun. So we polished that, this little area, this ramp here, and this small radius right here in the top of the hammer there. The area of the hammer that I'm talking about is this surface right here. This was polished so that when a slide comes back, it pushes the hammer back a little easier with a little less friction. You can see the angle here. That might benefit from some modification to it, but I didn't want to take that chance, and I simply polished this little face right here. Now this is the slide, and this is the rotating decocker, which when a slide comes back, the decocker pushes on the hammer and cocks the gun. So this surface of the decocker was polished to reduce some friction there and make it a little easier for the slide to cock the gun. So at this point, we've got the slide operating fairly smoothly. You don't hear the grittiness that you heard when the gun was new. So now we're going to look at the inside of the gun. Again, depress this lever right there to disassemble the gun. Now, when the gun was new, there's a little ridge right here at the beginning of the chamber that would catch on some of the lead bullets. If the lead bullet had a little shoulder on it, this ledge would catch it. So it's difficult to see, but I relieved this edge just a little bit with a Dremel tool, just to sort of put a little chamfer on it right there to aid in the feeding. This is where the chamber was relieved. There was a sharp edge right here on the gun, and that would cause the lead bullets to hang up. So this was just relieved, chamfered a little bit right there. Not sure you can see it right there. Now, when the gun was new, you would also notice that this feed ramp had machining marks horizontally on it. And obviously things don't slide smoothly, the bullets don't slide smoothly when you have machining marks on it. So I got in here with a felt bob on the Dremel and polished out those machining marks. Now you can feel it's very smooth like that. That made a major difference in feeding. Also, relieving, chamfering the bottom of the chamber here, that made a major difference in feeding also. This is the feed ramp that had horizontal machining marks on it, and they were polished out so that the bullet can slide up from the magazine a little bit easier. This feed ramp right here was polished. So after I slicked everything up and polished it, I tried the gun at the range, and I was still having a lot of failures to feed, failures to eject. So it occurred to me that this spring might be too powerful. There's two forces that the gun has to overcome when it fires and the slide goes to the back. One is the spring, the recoil spring, which tends to hold the slide forward. The other force that has to overcome is the slide cocking the gun by pushing on this face of the hammer. And as I said previously, I polished it, but I didn't want to mess around with changing the angle on it or lightening the hammer spring. So what I did at this point is I thought about the recoil spring. And if I made the recoil spring lighter, it would allow the slide to slide back easier. So I figured I'll start cutting coils off of the end of the spring. Of course, I ordered a new spring first so I could have a spare. And what I wound up with in the end was a spring with 4 1/4 coils cut off of the muzzle end of the spring. The modified spring is still tight on the barrel because I didn't modify the end that goes on the barrel. I cut everything off of the muzzle end. And again, they say to orient the spur of the spring there toward the 12 o'clock position. I don't know if it makes a difference. So you can see that the spring, after being shortened by 4 1/4 coils, is a radical change to that spring. But that made a major difference in how the gun functions. Now the gun practically functions with practically any ammunition I feed it. It still has trouble with CCI blazers. It seems to me the best ammunition that I use is either Remington Golden Bullets or Remington Thunderbolts. American Eagles work well, CCI Mini Mags, any of the high velocity stuff, but it's not necessary for me now to use hyper velocity shells. The gun functions nearly 100% with standard cheap high velocity 22 shells. It does not do so well with the Federal 36 grain bulk ammunition. Obviously, you have to keep the gun clean or you're going to start getting malfunctions, but I assume everybody realizes you have to keep a gun clean. What I did find is that the gun likes to be wet with light oil, very light oil. And the oil that I use is REM oil. As you can see, it's very, very light oil. I tried Hops lubricating oil. This is a little thicker, and this is not so great. It tends to retard the slide a little bit. But the REM oil seems great. I'm sure there's other oils out there, but in my estimation, it has to be a very light oil. And the gun likes to be wet with the oil. So I wet these slide surfaces right here, the slide groove here, the top of the slide surfaces here on the frame. Put a little oil on this rub mark, I don't know what's rubbing there, and wet the top surfaces of the slide with oil here, and the decocker here, and this little piece here. So I keep it very wet with oil. That seems to be the way the gun likes to function. So after I oil the gun, I just kind of wipe off the excess. You don't have to have oil all over your hands for the gun to work properly. It feels very slick, and now I have a gun that functions the way I want it to. I wanted to be able to shoot the cheapest ammunition I could for practice, and when I first got the gun, that was in a completely unacceptable state when it wouldn't shoot the cheap ammunition. Now, after making these modifications, it works well. Like I said, the major modification that I think the gun needed was to shorten the recoil spring. So thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, post them on YouTube. If you have any further questions, you can contact me at MacGyverL@gmail.com. That's MacGyver with 2 I's, L@gmail.com. Thank you.